David Allison there, and because the next two guests are notoriously difficult to control, I will tell you at this stage that next week all four main party leaders will be here on the Politics Show sofa in uncomfortable proximity, presumably for the leaders' debate. But now, the Greek chorus. That is John Curtice and Brian Taylor.
David really was exhausting the cliché well at the close there, wasn't he? I mean, that's it. That's the quota used up for the entire campaign. Well done. He's done a task that has served the public well in that regard.
Hey, Brian, he was mentioning the polls there. Perhaps we should just briefly, before we kick off the main bit, mention the latest polls.
Yeah, there's one today suggesting SNP and Labour neck and neck on the first vote with an SNP lead, suggested. On the second, it's a new polling organisation, so it's difficult to establish trend. The trend generally would appear to suggest that the two major parties are relatively close together, the Conservatives in third place and the Lib Dems in fourth. But you don't get a long enough trend on these polls, not sufficient polls really. And here, the cliché well has not been entirely exhausted. Here's one more. The only poll that counts is the one on May the 5th.
Oh, I think we've heard that one before, John. Now, John, what's interesting you today around what has been said so far? Are you looking at the tax proposals?
Well, no, I think the thing that's been most interesting about the past week, I think, is the degree to which Annabel Goldie has managed to make an impression on this campaign. I think most people accepted that she certainly came at least second in the SDV leaders debate that was televised in the earlier part of the week. And then in the Scotsman debate, there was this rather remarkable performance whereby Annabel was kind of trying to chide Alex ever so nicely, and Alex was kind of trying to charm her. And those two between them, in a sense that the dynamics between them rather dominated that debate. So I think certainly, I mean, although the polling evidence doesn't suggest that Annabel's particularly popular amongst the Scottish public in general, she certainly seems to be putting on the kind of performance that might well mean at least that the Conservatives are able to hang on to what they've got, and we might then at least get 15 or 16% of the vote for the Conservatives, and that certainly means that they're in a much stronger position at the moment than the Liberal Democrats, who are undoubtedly suffering badly from the fallout from Westminster. I think one of the interesting things about today's polls is that even amongst those people who voted for the Liberal Democrats 4 years ago, they don't think Nick Clegg is doing a very good job. Now, if those who didn't vote for the Liberal Democrats in the past don't think Nick Clegg is doing a job, they are in trouble, and it's very clear evidence that the party is losing. And then, meanwhile, Tavish, he's doing his best, but he just doesn't have the force of personality required to deflect voters' attention away from Nick Clegg and what's going on at Westminster, despite his attempts to do so.
Brian, where do you think we've got to with that, and what other issues are swimming around for you?
Well, what is intriguing in the coming week is we will have 3 of the 4 major party manifestos launched. Tories tomorrow, then Lib Dem, then Labour, SNP the following week. This is when they put their wares on display. It stops being just speculation. You have the actual offer before the voters. With regard to the Conservatives, who are tomorrow, they are punting it as the common sense manifesto. You might also call it, if you were using a phrase from Yes Minister, the courageous manifesto, in that they are promising to reverse to some extent the abolition of prescription charges. They are also saying they believe it is inevitable that there will have to be a graduate contribution of perhaps about 3,000 to 3,500 per year studied for universities, to fund universities. Now, the approach they're taking there is to say you simply cannot go on with things as they are in terms of constantly offering public spending when cuts are required to cut the deficit. They're describing the rival parties as deficit deniers. What's Annabel Goldie doing here? Well, Annabel, who is David Cameron's favourite Scottish auntie, as he once described her, a phrase she, I think, should regard as hideous. Well yes. Probably regarded as hideous, but basically she's taking the medicine that's coming down from Westminster and pronouncing it delicious. She's got no other option but to do that. The Lib Dems, they are taking a different perspective. They say that the toughness they would have is on cutting top people's pay. The Labour approach, which we'll get on Wednesday, they say the focus is all on jobs. But the intriguing thing is they are positing themselves in contradistinction, not to Alex Salmond primarily, but to David Cameron. They say David Cameron is they posit him as the sort of external bogeyman, and say that Labour are the ones to use the devolved powers to contest his approach.
Right. I think one must say, Labour need a good day on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I mean, the evidence of the opinion polls that Brian's just been referring to is that Labour once had a comfortable lead for this election. That lead appears to have disappeared. We've had 3 polls, all of which suggest it's now a close contest in the last week.
Why did that lead disappear?
Well, I think Labour's problem is that essentially now voters are focusing on the choice behind them at Holyrood rather than at Westminster politics, and they're saying, well, hang on, Alex Salmond, we rather like him. Ian Gray, who's that? Or if they do know who he is, they're not very keen on him. And meanwhile, there seems to be something of a policy vacuum surrounding the party north of the border. So I think they badly need 3 good ideas to come out of the Labour manifesto that actually arrest people's attention and suggest them that actually, yes, the Labour Party does have an idea as to how it won the devolved government, and therefore perhaps they are somebody to whom we can entrust Scotland's future for the next 5 years, as opposed to simply being a party that we might vote for because we don't like the Tories at Westminster.
Right, Brian. I know it's pointless telling you timings, but we have 30 seconds to go. On you go.
Well, to be fair to Labour, they have produced a raft of policies, including one today saying councils could keep more of the business rates if they engender new jobs. Their focus is entirely upon jobs. Of course, that is the focus of each of the parties, each of them putting the distinctive offers. I think next week and the beginning of the following week, when we have a BBC Issues poll on priorities and the SNP manifesto, the election really has begun.
Excellent. Thank you both very much indeed. And as ever, we're right out of time. A very good afternoon.